relevant now with the society that we've got going on?
Look around. Interview today about the fact that V's a timeless tale. You know, I mean, to me, it was always. I refer to it as Spartacus and the Revolt of the Slaves. It's the American Revolution. It's apartheid. It's wherever there's a group of people that have been oppressed by a hyperpower of some sort, and it's so intriguing how in the press in the last 2 years since the election in 16, kind of scary underpinning and the groundswell that begins to form around a charismatic, which is what we have, and it's really startling, and it has really sort of brought V, I think, back into the consciousness today, because if you go on my website, there are some posters of political satire, of a visitor, one of our propaganda posters with the visitor guy in uniform and the dark glasses and reaching out and shake his hand, except the face is Donald Trump. And that was a Canadian artist. We found a guy named Scott, he was a Scottish-Canadian artist in Calgary. He had done that, and it just appeared on the web. We had nothing to do with it. And it's happened around the world. In Avignon, France, last fall, on a wall the size of this wall, I mean, that big, there's this graffiti work, but it's not like spray paint graffiti, it's like a painting of the visitor leader with the dark glasses and the hand, and the face is the current U.S. president. And one of the things I particularly love about it is there's a French phrase that's written on the bottom, and it says, "To the heroism of the resistance fighters, past, present, and future, this work is respectfully dedicated." And it was like, I saw that, it was breathtaking. And I think that shows how it's just in the consciousness of people. And my wife, Susie, is really big on Facebook, and she sees these things coming in all the time from people who are, it sounds like they're talking about Hitler, but then you get through it and they're talking about V, and or what's going on in Washington right now, which is just so worrisome. And the silent majority in the Republican Congress, it's just terrifying. It's exactly it. Nobody speaks up until it's too late. Anyway, I went on and on.
They've been converted.
Well, no, they want their jobs, and they feel it's the only way they can keep their jobs, because if they say anything bad about our dear leader, he won't be there for it.
Money is money.
Money is money. I think the V reboot
Yes, sir.
didn't work.
No.
I enjoyed it. It's always great to see more V.
I didn't see it. I saw the first pilot, and I said, "Okay, not my cup of tea." You know, and I said, "Thank you." And it was unfortunately, and you know, and the good news for us was, who were trying to make the movie, is that opening night, huge rating, like the Bionic Woman. First night, huge rating, and then people said, "Oh, that's not the Bionic Woman I wanted to see," and they didn't come back. And the same thing happened with V. The audiences the second night were dropped off by 1/3, and it just kept falling, and so they pulled it, fired the whole team, and brought in a whole another team. And I had lunch with one of the guys who had been in the midst of all of that, and he said it was total chaos. Nobody had a clue what they were doing. And the guy that did the Bionic Woman remake, David Icke, had done Battlestar Galactica, which I thought was really pretty good. It was better than the original, I thought. And I thought maybe he could pull it off. And and I saw the pilot, and I thought, oh my God. It's just, it has no heart, has no humor, it has no humanity, and they don't have a leading lady. And after it, I gotta say, after it did crash and burn, he really took it on the chin. He got up and said, we blew it. We didn't know what it was about. And it didn't have any heart or humanity. I mean, exactly what I'd said, and he took the blame for it. And I thought, wow, I don't know David, but he's...
Yeah, it's nice when you like...
Exactly. This is in my
So
book.
how
Yeah.
will your film? Sorry.
Can you talk about the remastering process for the Blu-ray? Why the decision was made to switch the aspect ratio? Was it originally shot with that?
Oh, you
kind of
weren't
more
in
of
you weren't in the meeting just now, right?
No.
Okay, here's the short.
Was it shot more with the widescreen?
It was shot 185. We shot it in 185 originally, and the reason for that was I had a pilot. My movie pilot of The Incredible Hulk was released overseas as a foreign theatrical in '77. It instantly became the top-grossing motion picture in Europe for 2 months, and I'm going, okay.
We got something.
And a second Hulk that I did was also released over foreign, and we had shot that in 4:3 for TV. So when it came to V, I said, this is very likely to get released overseas, foreign, and I want it to look like it ought to look. So let's shoot it in 1.8.5 and protect for TV so that we don't see microphones coming down, But that way, when they were doing the original DVD, they called me and he said, hey, we've been looking at this and it looks great in letterbox. Did you shoot it that way? And I said, yeah. And when George Feldenstein was putting the Blu-ray together, that was the first call I got. He said, Kenny, I went back and it looks like you really shot it in 1.8.5. He said, well, what about the purists that are going to say, we want to see it the way we saw it? And I said, tell them, this is the better way to see it. Well, the other thing that was too funny about the original DVD release, because I had been leaning on Warner's for like 3 years, late 90s. See, you guys have to do a DVD release. Yeah, ho hum. In about 2001, I got a call from Warner's, and they said, we have a great idea. We got to do DVD release of V. I said, that's great. What are you going to use for a soundtrack? And they said, well, the original. I said, the original that's in mono? Because Warner's wouldn't let me mix in stereo because they said, well, nobody's broadcasting in stereo. And I said, no, but they will be next week, and just like the screens are going to get bigger.
Yeah.
And so we had to go back and remaster, and it was great because I got to go back. I had more time, twice as much time, doing the mix for the DVD than I did for the original pilot, and it sounds so much better. And on the Blu-ray, I don't know, it's even better.
Yeah,
It sounds
5.1.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, the helicopters fly by in the background. It's great stuff.
But do you think the second miniseries or the series will end up on Blu-ray?
I have no idea. It doesn't. There are a lot of fans of the final battle, but all of my friends who worked on it said you can't look at it, Kenny. It will tear your heart out and make you crazy. And so I didn't. And then one day I was channel surfing and I came across the scene and I said, "What is that?" I said, "Oh my God!" And I watched 30 seconds and I turned it off because I saw them make every mistake they could make in 30 seconds, and I knew that I could never see the whole thing. So I don't know. It was certainly popular. It did not get the ratings or the critical acclaim that I was fortunate enough to get the first time out. But as a matter of fact, one reviewer, Lee Margulies at the LA Times, just castigated it, took it apart, and at the end he said the reason it was so bad was because Kenny wasn't there.
Yeah, the heart and
This is the
soul
best
had been
review I
ripped
ever
from
got.
it.
So you wouldn't have made the baby a superhero star child. kind of
Gee, no! Oh my God! When I heard
Deus Ex
that, I went,
Machina.
"Oh, gag me! This is what are you crazy?" And the whole well, you didn't hear the story either about Michael Ironside, who is a great actor and I love him. And I had nothing to do with the casting, but Ham Taylor's character was in a wheelchair, and it defined his entire character. The fact that he was trapped in a wheelchair. And when Ironside got the part, he went to the producers and said, "My name is Ironside. I can't play a guy in a wheelchair." And they said,
Right.
"Oh yeah, he doesn't need to be in a wheelchair. We'll take it's like, exploded the concept."
So how will your movie then differ from the NBC reboot and what happened in Final Battle and the series? And all that
The
stuff?
remake will be a real, legitimate remake of a very faithful remake to the original. I'm not going to go in and reimagine it. The deadly
Or
word.
reboot.
That's right. Yeah, no, not that. No, it will really be a remake. But obviously, with a lot of almost all of the same characters and the storylines and stuff. A few twisted around and a little bit different. Robert Maxwell, for example, was an anthropologist in the original. He is a computer guru in this one. And his boss is like Zuckerberg, or the head of Cisco or something. So there are a few changes there like that. But basically, it's the story and a lot of the lines even because, if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's the thing. And I didn't want to reinvent the wheel because the beauty of coming to places like this is you get to be face to face with the fans. And I get a gazillion emails because on the original DVD I put an address if you had comments or questions. Where would you?
That's how I emailed you.
Well, that's it. But they come in literally by the thousands, and I really answer all of them. Of course, I have created some macros for the questions that are always answered, but I always try to personalize them too. And it has given me a sense of what they want, about how they when the sequel, the series came out. But there's been a couple of tries, and always they just don't connect with the audience and the way that the original did. And so what I want to do is satisfy the fans but then exceed their expectations.
Of course.
And there will be some new wrinkles and twists and.
Of course, and now technology's
Well,
cut out.
yes.
You knew how
Well, there
to
was
do it in
no
mono.
internet. There was
You
no.
have to do it in
There was no
mono now,
internet. There
so
was no
that's
cell
good.
phones. There was all of that stuff. That had to be. So it'll be a faithful remake, but at the same time, I think it's going to have enough new sparkle that it will just get a bit.
Can you
Okay.
can you talk about doing complicated visual effects and makeups on television in the early 1980s with the technology that was available at the time?
Well, when I had to turn Bill Bixby into Lou Ferrigno in 1977, we did use the same exact technology that they had for the Wolfman in the 1940s. You'd shoot him a little makeup, and we'd have a sandwich while we put more makeup on Bill, and we'd shoot a little more, and then he'd dissolve, and ultimately, we would make the transformation to Lou. And so there was no morphing, there was nothing like that. And when I came up with the idea of a woman swallowing a guinea pig, one of the guys in
That was awesome.
I didn't say this in the production meeting, but one of the guys in the crew said, "You think you can find an actress that can do that?" I'm not going to even answer that question. So the idea is, to me, if you can do it in the camera, that's the way you want to do it. That's the way Peter Jackson does it. That's the way Cameron does it. Certainly, it's the way Chris Nolan does it. Whenever you can do it in the camera, it's great. But when it's easier and faster and it's going to look just as good, to be able to do it in CGI, and you have more control, and you can make it look great, and you can move the camera. I mean, I was so hamstrung in those days. I was at the Motion Picture Academy last week, and they had a gathering of all the guys and men and women that had worked on Star Wars, the first Star Wars, and all the people that had worked on Rogue One. And it was like a 3-hour evening of how we got from there to here and how we had it. And I realized that they had been hamstrung on Star Wars the same way I had. If you wanted to get visual effects going, you had to have the camera still for the most part. And also Lucas had the benefit of putting his spacecraft against black sky, which is a great saving grace because you don't get matte lines, you can't see them. But when you try to take a spacecraft and put it into the middle of LA, and the lighting and there's such little psychological touches that are so hard to get. So the CGI is really helpful, and also now to be able to previs. I ran a previs, if you weren't there, I ran a previs clip that we were working up at my friends at CBS Digital for the movie, and now I can really make the inside of the mothership look like gangbusters. It's gangbusters.
Speaking of guinea pigs, what role would Jane Badler play in your movie?
I don't know. That's a tricky one because I can't. I need somebody that is younger now to play V, to play in the movie, and I have the ability to use some of the human players like Mark, to play in the sequels. As their age that they are now, but it's going to be tricky how to figure out the casting there because, like I said, I always want to work with my friends. Thank you, and the people that I've loved and who have done great jobs for me. So I would try to find a way to work them in one way or the other. But see, Mark and Faye, for example, if she was up for it, would be age appropriate to play the older characters, and so we'll see how it plays out.
You had talked a little bit in the panel about how the funding was originally going to come from
Desilu Studios. This
that
guy,
kinda went away.
this billionaire guy bought the right to Desilu Studios. He thought, and started making some deals with people like us. He gave us a big chunk of change for a 6-month option, and we started working right away. We were doing the visual effects, we were doing location scouting and all that sort of stuff. But we kept waiting for, where's the tranches coming in that you said were going to be coming in? And it turned out, and Hollywood Reporter did this big expose about the fact that he was a sham. And the money that he had given us, he had borrowed from somebody else. And then CBS started suing him because he hadn't really gotten the rights to that name and Desilu, and it was a big mess. It was a heartbreaker.
Yeah,
because
really.
he was there, and we were going to have creative control and we were going to do it exactly the way I
So
wanted.
then what's the status then if that funding wasn't?
That went away?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we did. Maybe you missed that part too. Okay, this is important to tell you because we have, my team has never stopped working, but we just added a new producing partner in the last 5 weeks, a guy named Ted Field. And if you don't know Ted Field, I will tell you that he's made like about 40 of the big Hollywood movies, including the Riddick trilogy, the 3 Men and a Baby, and the Last Samurai, and the trilogy that goes under the title of Jumanji. And Ted came to us with a way to do it. to follow the pathway that I want to do, because I didn't want to give up creative control, because I could have sold it to a studio for mid seven figures.
Then
10
your
years
baby
ago.
gets raped, and you don't want
That's
your
right.
baby raped,
That's right. Well, that's it. I'd seen it happen. I'd seen the Bionic Woman, the Incredible Hulk get screwed up, and V also. And I said, no, I'd rather the movie never got made than got made wrong by the wrong people. And so that's why we've been holding on. And Ted, I think, is going to, and that's breaking news today. Nobody's heard that until today. But Ted is a dynamite. Yes, sir.
We're cutting you off.
Oh, phooey, but I love these people, man.
And you know what? You'll see him again someday, but I got to.
Okay,
That's for you.
oh,
That's for you.
Everybody.
Sorry, Mr. Singer. You've seen Aliens, come on.
That's okay. It's refreshing. How is everybody today?
Doing great.
So far, so good. Good. What are we going to do?
How is life back in the world of V yet again?
How?
It never leaves you, does it?
No, V. You're always. That's the thing about making films, is that one of the contrasts between film and stage. I just returned from this past year. I just played Macbeth at the Southern Shakespeare Festival's production of that same play of Macbeth. And the thing about being on live stage is that when the production's over, it's over. It just vanishes into the ether, and nobody ever sees it again. And it's even easy for the actor to forget the resonance of that, no matter how much research or rehearsal went into it. But with a filmic character like Mike Donovan, like V, something like that, there's always the rerun of it. There's always a reprise of it someplace, and then there's always the chance that there's going to be another whole production in which Mike Donovan shows up again. So being back here and re-experiencing the self-identity with Donovan is sort of part and parcel of the film industry, I think. Yeah.
What do you think it is about?
Nobody ever accused me of a short answer. I really would love to be able to say pithy things, but I can't.
What do you think it is about V that's resonated over all the decades? Is there something specific?
I think there are a lot of things that conspire to make V relevant over the succeeding generations since its first filming. And one of them is just, let's be honest, one of them just is, it's an adventure story of daring do, and everybody likes to see the hero leap from tall buildings at a single bound and knock down the bad guy and ride off into the sunset with the girl, and everybody loves to see that kind of stuff, and I certainly enjoy portraying that. But beyond that, I think the story of V, which is the drawing together of all portions of community so that we all recognize and celebrate the plurality of the world that we all inhabit. That world that Neil Armstrong said that he could hide behind his thumb when looking out of Apollo 11, right? That he could hide the entire world, all of us, right behind his thumb. We're all in this together. And I think that's one of the aspects of V, I think, that keeps it relevant.
So V to me, because I grew up when watching this,
Right.
and from my age. But the thing that I was curious about was, this was my Star Trek.
Right. Right.
How is it for you to be a part of something like this that has been like part of sci-fi history and become such an icon in it?
It fulfills the dream, the Hollywood dream, for any actor. When I was a kid, everything was westerns. It was the Lone Ranger and Roy Rogers and Hopper and Cassidy. It was all this. So, for me, one day I'm walking along the street and I'm Mark Singer, and the next day I'm Mike Donovan, and I am fulfilling that desire that I had as a kid to be a television hero, to be a filmic hero. I didn't realize that the demands, emotionally, intellectually, morally, all those demands would resonate within me in order that the character be as honestly portrayed as it could. And I think I learned a great deal, not just about filmmaking, but about filmmakers, about what it takes to bring something like that actually to the screen. what kind of metal it calls for from the producers, the writers, the directors, and the performers. So it was the button, I guess, to this is that it was the fulfillment of a dream to become, to portray that character. Yeah.
Can you talk about the first time you saw the V script? Like, what was your reaction to it? Did
I'm
you
sorry,
end
do
up-
that again, the what?
The first time you saw the script to the
Oh.
miniseries, what was your reaction to it? What was the process to get the role?
When I first read the script, of course, the immediate effect was that the writing was terrific and the story was terrific. That's the first two things that strike you immediately. But the process of getting the role was really almost as though it was meant to be. Ken Johnson read my part to the network for me, and then hustled me out of the room before I could say a word. So the role was conferred upon me in the old-fashioned way that it used to be done back in the golden days of the silver screen, which is that the auteur selected somebody beforehand and said, that's going to be my Mike Donovan, and ran it right through the network, and there I was.
Why he wanted you in particular?
He had seen me on stage performing in Shakespeare in The Taming of the Shrew, something that's still available, by the way, on DVD. I'll blow my own horn for a brief moment. No, but I mean,
You're entitled. You're the headliner. Do
I
whatever you want.
received the Los Angeles Drama Critics Circle Award for that performance as Petruchio in Taming the Shrew. So he saw that, and then he also had seen me in a film that I made called The Beastmaster. And when he saw those two things, he said, "Okay, that's my guy. That's who I want." And so he.
So
brought
he's
that.
a mix of Petruchio and Beastmaster?
You're not far off in saying that. Those roles both underpin the character of Mike Donovan. I was for a requisite number of years while on the live stage. I was basically a character actor. I was playing King Lear and Shylock and Antonio and all these different people in different plays. But it takes a special outlook to produce the image and characteristics, personality characteristics of what we think of as heroic on the screen. And I was very fortunate to be sort of schooled in this when I was playing the Beastmaster in association with a director named Chuck Bale, B-A-I-L, Chuck Bale. And I actually asked him on one of the earliest days of our filming of The Beastmaster, I took him aside and asked him, I said, look, I've got to do this character that is supposed to respond through the movie in a certain set of ways, and I don't know how to make those choices correctly. Can you help me? And he said, yeah, we can do that. And he's the one who schooled me. He was one of the originators of he was one of the founding members of the Stuntmen's Association. So his knowledge of filmmaking and his expertise is very deep and broad, and so I was very, very fortunate to be taught that way.
Hey again. Hello again.
Hello.
So they brought you back for the reboot or whatever.
Right.
I don't know if you were playing Mike Donovan or what, but
Right.
the question is, did you know where that character was going before they pulled the plug? Because to me, the show got really interested when you showed up, and then they pulled the plug on us.
Right. I appreciate that you say that it got interesting when I showed up. I hope that's in a good way. I just know that I had no idea where the character was supposed to go. I'm not certain that they did either. My hope was that through being on the show, I would be able to pull the show back more toward the actual flesh and blood of the 1980s and less from the sort of CGI experience, which I found to be quite different than my own experience earlier on.
Why do you think that show failed?
That's beyond my pay grade.
I actually know the answer to
Did you
that.
watch it? Did you watch it before getting cast?
I'm not a good audience for anything that I'm in. I never am. I remember people asking me those questions before about my own involvement in V, and I have to say I usually was so busy either making that project or moving on to the next that I rarely had time to actually see what it was that we made, except in those days we used to see what were known as the dailies or the rushes. And so I might have seen some of it, or when I was doing some looping or some additional dialogue recording, but basically there are many of these shows that I really have never even seen.
They didn't honor the original series, and I think that was the biggest problem with that show. I was a huge fan of it. I used to play you when it was recess. You were my superhero. I used to say,
Thank
Not
you.
just as
I was
a
Juliet
Donovan, but as
Parrish.
the Beastmaster. As a Beastmaster also, I think everyone wanted to be.
and it just didn't satisfy that craving that we had for V again.
I think so often the mistake is made in creating sequels that a whole, it's like reinventing the wheel. No, well, you should go with what's tried and true. That's what got you there. You know, and so perhaps that's true.
Yeah.
So you were talking about all your work in Shakespeare, and I'm curious to hear from you how it is to work in genre, and how genre is getting more respect now, and how with films like this, with V, you're able to talk about morality tales and talk about things with blanketed within that, and people get thinking about things. Can you talk about being a Shakespearean actor and working in sci-fi, and how you bring that gravitas and that importance to it?
Well, I think that this goes to my general belief about acting in the first place, which is that I think that every actor and every writer should start off with Shakespeare. Period. Very often the way Shakespeare is approached these days, it's not until you already have learned a whole bunch of things, and in the acting realm, you've been working on contemporary pieces, and then eventually you feel it's felt that you know enough about that now you can work on Shakespeare. It's just the reverse. You should start with Shakespeare because he's so architectural. He's so he's almost legalistic. Every character that he writes, every word that he writes for every character is almost like a contract. That character does not step out of those characteristics which absolutely, explicitly define their mood, their tone, their intent, their morality, everything about them. And so when you then shift something like that over into a modern context like sci-fi, you then apply the same architectural tenets that you learned in Shakespeare to that. And you begin to parse the characters, and you parse the situations that they're in a similar fashion, so that you remain as true as you can to the through storyline of the developing story. If you're in a series, eventually your own character is going to, the writers are not going to be defining the character to you. You're going to be defining the characters, and the writers are going to be writing to the character. And that's when you begin to know that you're in full swing. You can see this in many series, many of your favorite series, if you look at them in retrospect or binge watch them or something like that. You can see the characters themselves that the writers begin to write to them, as opposed to them following the writers.
With that, we are done. Everybody say
Yes.
thank you to Mark Singer.
Thank you very much.
That was awesome.
All right, guys. Thanks, guys. Pleasure, Mr. Singer.
All right.